The phone buzzed against the marble countertop for the third time before Josephine Marsh picked it up, and that single decision would unravel everything inside the Sato mansion by nightfall. She had been polishing the silverware in the second-floor pantry when the call came through on the kitchen line, an old habit of the household staff answering whichever phone rang closest, and this one happened to be sitting on the counter where Amara Voss, fiancée to Rin Sato, head of the Sato clan and the most feared man in Osaka's underworld, had left it after breakfast. Josephine was 22 years old and had worked in this mansion for 8 months, long enough to know its rhythms, its silences, its careful architecture of fear disguised as order. She answered out of instinct, said the Sato residence, and a man's voice on the other end, low and unfamiliar, asked for Amara. She should have simply carried the phone to her. That would have been the end of it. But as she crossed the kitchen toward the sitting room where Amara was arranging fresh orchids with the particular boredom of a woman who had never once had to work for anything, Josephine heard something in the man's tone that made her slow her steps. Not a business associate's voice. Not a friend's. Something with an edge of intimacy that did not belong to any man other than the one Amara was engaged to marry. She handed over the phone without a word and returned to the kitchen, telling herself it was none of her business, that a maid's entire value in a house like this was measured by how much she did not see and did not repeat. But Amara did not notice, 20 minutes later, that the call had never fully disconnected. Rin Sato's office sat 2 floors above the sitting room, a room of dark wood and glass that overlooked the private garden, and it was there, at his desk reviewing shipping manifests that were not really shipping manifests, that a soft chime on his desk console alerted him to an open line on the house phone system, a feature installed for security purposes that Amara did not know existed, a feature that fed any active call directly into a low speaker embedded beneath his desk. He almost silenced it. He had learned, in 11 years of running the Sato organization, that most calls picked up by that system were nothing, a supplier confirming a delivery, a housekeeper ordering groceries. But something made him leave it running, some instinct sharpened by a decade of men who had smiled at him and lied to his face, and what came through the speaker in the next 4 minutes rearranged the architecture of his life. He is in his office. He will not hear anything, Amara said, her voice pitched low, almost lazy, the voice of a woman entirely certain of her own safety. You worry too much, Daisuke. Daisuke Ito. Rin knew the name the way a man knows the name of a debt collector standing at his door. Ito ran the Kobe faction, a rival organization that had spent the last 2 years testing the boundaries of Sato territory with small provocations, disputed shipments, poached couriers, nothing large enough to justify open war, but enough to keep Ren's men watching the borders. Ito was engaged, publicly, to a woman from his own organization's inner circle, and he was, apparently, also entangled with the woman Ren had asked to marry him 6 months ago. I am not worried. Ito's voice came through, thin and tinny through the speaker, but unmistakable. I am careful. There is a difference. Your fiancé did not become the most dangerous man in Osaka by being careless himself. He is careless about me, Amara said, and there was something in the way she said it, something almost gleeful, that made Ren's hand go very still on the manifest he had been holding. He thinks I sit in this house arranging flowers and waiting for him. He has no idea what I've been arranging. The merger, Ito said. Tell me you have made progress. More than progress. Amara's laugh was soft, satisfied. I have access to everything, Daisuke. His shipment schedules. The names of his lieutenants who are unhappy with how he handled the Western Territory dispute last spring. I know which of his men can be turned with enough money, and I know exactly how much money it will take for each one. A pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. By the time we marry, I will know this organization better than he does. And when Kobe moves against Sato territory, I will already be inside the walls. And the wedding, Ito said. You are certain you can go through with it? It is one ceremony, Amara said, bored again, the way she had been bored arranging flowers. A few hours of vows I do not mean, to a man I do not love, so that I can hand you an empire on a silver plate. I have survived worse for less reward. Ren Sato sat in his office with a manifest forgotten on his desk, and something in his chest went cold, and then very, very still, the particular stillness he brought to a room right before violence, a quality his men had learned to fear more than his anger, because his anger was loud and past. This stillness did not pass. He did not move for nearly a full minute. Then he reached forward, disconnected the line himself so the sound would not carry, and sat with his hands folded on the desk, staring at nothing, recalculating everything he had believed about the last 6 months of his life. He thought of the maid, Josephine. He had barely registered her presence in the house before now, one of a dozen staff members who moved through the mansion's rooms with the practiced invisibility the job required, but he understood, with the cold clarity that had made him head of his organization at 31 years old, that she had connected that call, that she likely knew, or suspected, exactly what he had just heard, and that whatever she knew now made her either an asset or a liability, and in his world, there was very little room between those two categories. He sent for her within the hour. Josephine had never been summoned to Ren Sato's office before, not in 8 months of employment, and the walk up the 2 flights of stairs felt longer than it should have, her heartbeat loud in her own ears. She had heard the stories about him the way every member of the household staff had, whispered over meals in the kitchen, the ink visible at his collar when his shirt cuffs shifted, the way rooms went quiet when he entered them, the way he had once ended a business dispute with 3 words and a silence that made grown men leave the room pale. She did not know him personally. She had spoken to him perhaps 4 times in her employment, brief exchanges about a delivery or a scheduling matter. Always polite, always distant, the particular formal courtesy of a man who kept everyone at exactly the distance he intended. His office door was open when she arrived, and he did not look up from the window immediately, standing with his back to the room, his hands folded behind him, his shoulders set in a way that told her nothing good waited in this conversation. "Close the door," he said. She did, and the click of the latch sounded very loud in the quiet room. "You answered a call this morning," he said. He turned then, and his eyes found hers, dark and unreadable, the eyes of a man who had trained himself across a lifetime not to reveal what he was thinking. "On the kitchen line. For Miss Boss." Josephine's pulse spiked, but she kept her voice level, the way 8 months of survival in this house had taught her to. "Yes, sir." A man asked for her. "I brought her the phone." "Did you hear the voice on the other end?" "Briefly." He asked for her by name. "I did not recognize it." This was true mostly. She had not recognized the voice, only its tone, the intimacy that had made her uneasy enough to slow her steps. Ren studied her for a long moment, and she made herself hold his gaze, because she had learned in this house that looking away from a dangerous man read as guilt whether or not guilt was present. "The call was not disconnected properly," he said finally. "It fed through to my office. I heard everything Miss Boss said to the man on the other end of that line." Something in his voice, flat and controlled in a way that suggested enormous effort to keep it flat and controlled, told Josephine this was not a small matter, and she understood, with a drop of real fear, that she had just become a witness to something that could get her killed for knowing it. "I did not hear what was said, sir," she said carefully. "I only carried the phone." "I am not asking whether you eavesdropped," Ren said. "I am telling you what I heard because you're the only other person in this house who knows that call took place, and I need to know whether you noticed anything before today. Any pattern, any visitor, any call she made that she did not want overheard." Josephine hesitated, and that hesitation was, she knew, its own kind of answer. "Tell me," Ren said, and though his voice did not rise, something in it carried the particular weight of a man used to being obeyed without question. She told him, not because she wanted to involve herself in the affairs of a man like Ren Sato, but because she understood, standing in that office, that lying to him now would be far more dangerous than telling the truth, and because some part of her, the part that had spent 8 months watching Amara Voss move through this house with cold entitlement toward the staff who served her, felt something close to relief at finally being asked. She told him about the calls Amara took in the garden, always with her back to the house, always ending them quickly if a member of staff approached. About the courier who came twice a month with packages Amara insisted on receiving personally, never through the household's usual delivery protocols. About the way Amara had asked Josephine 3 weeks earlier, careless and offhand, which nights Ren typically worked latest in his office, a question Josephine had answered without thinking much of it at the time. Ren listened without interrupting, his face giving away nothing, but she watched his jaw tighten fractionally with each detail. The only visible sign of what she now understood was a controlled and enormous anger. "You will tell no one what you told me today," he said, when she had finished. "Not the other staff. Not Miss Voss. No one." "Yes, sir. And you will continue exactly as you have been, in every visible way. Nothing changes about your duties or your manner toward her." His eyes held hers, and something in them, some calculation she could not read, made her uneasy in a different way than fear. "I need eyes inside this house that Miss Voss does not think to guard herself against. You are already trusted enough by her to be invisible. That is useful to me right now." Josephine understood, with a chill, exactly what he was asking. Not simply her silence, but her active participation in whatever came next. "You are asking me to spy on her." "I am asking you to keep doing what you already do," Ren said. "Observe. Say nothing. Report to me what you see." A pause. "You'll be compensated for the risk." She should have refused. Every instinct honed by 3 years of domestic work in dangerous houses told her that involving herself in the internal war of a Mafia family was a decision that could not be walked back once made. But she thought of Amara's casual cruelty toward the household staff, the way she had once made a younger girl cry over a wrinkled tablecloth, the cold satisfaction in her voice on that phone call. "I have survived worse for less reward," and something in Josephine, some quiet, stubborn refusal to simply be invisible furniture in a house built on lies, made her answer before she had fully decided to. "All right," she said. "I will watch." Ren nodded once, a small, economical movement, and something in his face shifted, not warmth exactly, but a kind of recognition, the look of a man reassessing someone he had underestimated. "Good," he said. "You may go." But therefore, she did not go immediately. She stood a moment longer, some instinct pushing her past the careful distance the job required. "Sir, if I may ask, what will you do about her?" Something moved behind his eyes, quick and cold, and gone almost before she registered it. "Nothing yet," he said. A man who acts before he understands the whole shape of a betrayal only wins half a war. His gaze held hers a beat longer than necessary. "You will help me understand the whole shape of it." Over the following 2 weeks, Josephine became something she had never intended to be inside the Sato mansion, a quiet conduit of information moving between two people who could not speak to each other directly. She watched Amara more closely now, not with suspicion visible on her face, but with the practiced attentiveness her job already required, and she began noticing things she had let pass unremarked before. The way Amara's phone, a second device Josephine had not previously known existed, stayed locked in a drawer of her vanity, retrieved only when she believed herself alone. The way she left the house twice, unaccompanied by any of Ren's usual security, claiming appointments that did not appear on the household calendar. The way, once, Josephine had glimpsed a folder of documents on Amara's desk before Amara swept them away, documents with numbers and territory names that meant nothing to Josephine but that she memorized anyway, reciting them silently to herself on the walk down to report to Ren that evening. Ren, for his part, began treating Josephine differently in small ways that only she would notice, a nod in the hallway that acknowledged her rather than looking through her, a private word of thanks after she delivered information that confirmed a courier's route matched a name his own intelligence had flagged weeks earlier. He was not warm. He was careful, always, controlled in every interaction, but she began to see beneath that control something she had not expected to find in a man of his reputation, a kind of exhausted loneliness, a man who had built an empire out of vigilance and had never once been permitted to trust anyone inside its walls. "You could have told her I knew," he said to her once, late in the second week, in the quiet of his office after she had delivered a report. "You could have warned Miss Voss and let her run, or let her turn the situation to her advantage. Many people in your position would have sold that information to whichever side offered more." "I am not for sale," Josephine said, and something in the flatness of her own voice surprised her. Ren studied her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind his dark eyes. "No," he said finally. "I do not think you are." A pause, and then, quieter, in a register she had not heard from him before, something almost involuntary. "It has been some time since anyone in this house told me the truth simply because it was true, and not because they wanted something from me." The confession, small as it was, landed harder in the quiet room than Josephine expected, and she found herself looking away first, something in her chest tightening in a way that had nothing to do with fear. But the danger accelerated faster than either of them anticipated. Ren's own intelligence network, working parallel to Josephine's observations, confirmed within the third week that Daisuke Ito's Kobe faction was moving assets toward the Osaka border, quietly repositioning soldiers in a pattern that read, to anyone trained to read it, as preparation for a strike timed to Ren and Amara's wedding, now only 3 weeks away. The wedding itself, Ren now understood, had never been intended as a union. It had been designed from its earliest planning as the precise moment of maximum vulnerability, a day when Ren's guard would be occupied with ceremony rather than defense, when Amara would have full, unquestioned access to every corner of the mansion and every name on the guest list of Sato allies. It was Josephine who discovered the final piece, on a night that nearly cost her everything. She had been sent to Amara's private sitting room to collect laundry, a task ordinary enough not to arouse suspicion, but Amara was out that evening, and the second phone, the one Josephine had never once seen unlocked, sat forgotten on the vanity beside a half-finished glass of wine. Josephine should have walked past it. Every instinct that had kept her safe in this house for 8 months told her to walk past it. But therefore, she thought of the shipment names she had memorized without understanding, of Ito's voice through that first overheard call, of the cold satisfaction in Amara's laugh, and she crossed the room and picked up the phone. It was not locked. The screen woke to a single open message thread with Daisuke Ito, and Josephine's eyes moved fast over the last several exchanges, her heart hammering, her hands unsteady. Confirmation of the wedding date. A discussion of which security personnel would be stationed where during the ceremony, information only someone deeply embedded in Sato household logistics could have supplied. And near the bottom, sent only that afternoon, a single line that made Josephine's blood run cold. "The maid has been asking too many questions. I will deal with it before the wedding." Josephine heard the sitting room door open behind her before she had time to set the phone down. Amara stood in the doorway, her expression sliding from surprise into something colder and more dangerous in the space of a single breath. "What are you doing with my phone?" "I was collecting the laundry, ma'am, and it was ringing," Josephine said, the lie coming fast, practiced smoothness covering the tremor in her hands as she set the phone back on the vanity. "I only meant to bring it to you." "It does not ring," Amara said, crossing the room slowly, deliberately, and Josephine understood, watching her approach, that she was looking at the true face beneath the board, entitled mask Amara had worn for 8 months, something sharp and calculating and entirely without warmth. "You have been watching me." Josephine did not answer, and her silence was answer enough. Amara's hand closed hard around Josephine's wrist, her nails biting in, her voice dropping to something low and vicious. "You will say nothing of what you have seen tonight," Amara said. "Or, I promise you, girl, you will not live long enough to regret the choice you made instead." But therefore, at that exact moment, the door opened again, and Rensato stood in the frame, his presence filling the room with a silence more absolute than anything Amara's threats had produced. He had come looking for Josephine when she failed to return from her task within the expected time, some instinct, honed by weeks of her quiet reliability, telling him something was wrong. Amara released Josephine's wrist as though burned, straightening, already reaching for the careful, practiced warmth she had worn for 6 months of engagement.
"Hey."
"I was just discussing household matters with the staff." "Were you?" Rin said, and his voice carried none of the warmth Amara's face was already reaching for. He crossed the room slowly, and Josephine watched him take in the scene, her reddened wrist, Amara's stiff posture, the phone still sitting on the vanity where it did not belong in any innocent version of this story. He picked it up without asking permission, and Amara's face went very still, the mask finally, fully falling away. He read the message from Ito in silence, his expression giving away nothing, though Josephine, close enough now to see the tension in his jaw, understood exactly what it cost him to remain that still. "I heard your phone call 3 weeks ago," he said finally, setting the device down with a precision more frightening than if he had thrown it. "The one you forgot to disconnect." "Every word of it, Amara. The merger. The lieutenants you intend to turn. The wedding you intended as the day this family fell." Amara's face drained of color, but she recovered fast, the particular resilience of someone who had built a career on lying convincingly. "Ren, whatever you think you heard, it is not what it sounds like. I can explain. I was gathering information to protect you. I suspected Ito of planning something, and I was drawing him out to learn his plans. I would never actually betray you, you must believe me." "I do not," Ren said, and the words landed with a finality that filled the room like cold water. "I have spent 3 weeks confirming every detail of what you told him. The shipment schedules you passed along and the lieutenant you were courting with promises of a better position under Ito's rule, a man who came to me 2 weeks ago, ashamed, and told me everything you had offered him. I did not act immediately, because I needed to understand the full shape of your betrayal before I ended it. I understand it now." Amara's eyes flicked to Josephine, sharp with sudden, furious understanding. "Her. You have had her watching me. She told me the truth when everyone else in your orbit was telling me lies," Ren said. "That is worth more to me than anything you have offered in 6 months of pretending to love me." What happened next moved fast, the particular fast violence of men who had been waiting outside that door on Ren's earlier instruction, 2 of his security detail entering at his single unspoken signal, and Amara's composure finally shattering into something closer to panic as she understood the scope of what had already been decided before she ever walked into this room. "You cannot simply remove me," she said, backing toward the window, her voice rising for the first time. "Ito will move on your territory the moment I disappear. He is already positioned. You cannot stop what is already in motion." "I can," Ren said, "because you were foolish enough to tell him your plans over an unsecured line, and I have had 3 weeks to prepare for exactly the strike you were arranging." He looked at her a long moment, something in his face closing like a door being locked forever. "Take her to the East Wing. She does not leave this house until the wedding date, which will now be repurposed for something considerably less pleasant for Mr. Ito than a marriage." The days that followed moved with the precise, brutal efficiency Ren Sato was known for throughout Osaka's underworld. He did not wait passively for Ito's faction to strike on the planned wedding date. Instead, working from the intelligence Josephine had gathered and the confessions extracted from the lieutenant who had confirmed Amara's approach, he restructured his own defenses entirely, quietly repositioning his most trusted soldiers to the exact points Amara had identified as vulnerable, turning the trap that had been built for him into one built for Ito instead. On the night that would have been his wedding, Ren Sato stood in the mansion's central courtyard, lit by lanterns that had been prepared for a ceremony that would never take place, and watched Daisuke Ito's forces walk directly into an ambush constructed from their own stolen intelligence. The fight, when it came, was brief and decisive, the particular economy of violence Ren had built his reputation on, precise and controlled, and entirely without the wasted brutality of lesser men. Ito himself was captured before dawn, his Kobe faction's leadership dismantled within a week. The territorial threat that had loomed over Sato land for 2 years ended not through open war, but through the quiet, methodical unwinding of a betrayal that had been meant to end everything. Amara Voss disappeared from Osaka's underworld entirely. Her fate a subject were never discussed with anyone in the household, and Josephine understood, without needing to ask, that some things in this world were settled in ways that did not appear on any official record. 3 months passed before the mansion fully settled back into a rhythm that felt, for the first time since Josephine had arrived there, honest. She continued her work, but something had shifted permanently in the house's architecture of trust, and she found herself, more and more often, in Rinsato's office in the evenings, no longer summoned for reports on a woman who no longer existed within these walls, but for reasons neither of them named directly at first. "You did not have to tell me the truth that first day," Rin said to her one evening, standing at the same window where he had been standing when he first heard Amara's voice through that forgotten call, the summer light fading gold across the private garden below. "You could have protected yourself by staying silent. Many people would have." "I thought about it," Josephine admitted, "but I have never been very good at staying quiet about things that matter." "I noticed," Rin said, and something in his voice, dry and almost warm, was new, a register she had not heard from him in her first 8 months in this house. He turned from the window to face her fully, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear now. "I have built an empire on the principle that trust is a liability. That the moment you rely on someone, you have handed them a knife." He paused, and something in his controlled composure seemed, for the first time, to cost him real effort to maintain. "You are the first person in a very long time who made me reconsider that principle." Josephine felt something in her chest go still and warm at once, the particular vertigo of hearing an admission she had not let herself hope for. "That is a dangerous thing to say to your household staff, Mr. Sato." "Run," he said, "and I am aware of exactly how dangerous it is." He crossed the small distance between them, close enough now that she could see the fine details of him she had noticed and refused to examine over these past months, the ink visible at his collar, the particular stillness of his hands. "I am not a man who says things he does not mean. I am telling you this because I have decided I no longer wish to pretend I do not notice you in every room I enter." Neither of them moved for a long moment, the space between them charged with something that had been building silently since the night she had chosen to tell him the truth instead of protecting herself with silence. When he finally reached for her hand, it was deliberate, unhurried, the same precision he brought to everything, and she did not pull away. "This changes everything about your position in this house," he said quietly. "I need you to understand that before anything else is decided between us." "I understood that the moment I picked up that phone 8 months ago," Josephine said. "I am not asking you to make it simple. I am only telling you I am not walking away from it either." Something in his face, guarded across a lifetime of necessary distance, finally, fully opened, and in the quiet gold light of that office, Sato, the most feared man in Osaka's underworld, allowed himself, for the first time in longer than he could remember, to simply stand still with another person without calculating the cost of it. The mansion outside carried on with its ordinary evening rhythms, staff moving through corridors, dinner preparations underway in the kitchen below, entirely unaware that the woman who had once been invisible furniture in these halls now stood at the center of the household's most closely guarded truth. Josephine did not know exactly what the coming months would ask of her, standing beside a man whose world would always carry danger in its foundation. But she knew, with a certainty that had nothing to do with luck and everything to do with the choice she had made that first day in his office, that she would not face whatever came next as someone waiting to be rescued. She had already proven, long before he ever took her hand, that she was the kind of woman who acted, who watched, who told the truth when silence would have been safer. And in a house built on secrets that had turned out to be the rarest kind of power there was.